of hate. It's a good thing it's a big block. At least 1 or 2 cylinders are extra. Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is my 1968 Dodge Charger. You know, the one we call Corndog for some reason. I love this car. It's one of my most favoritist things of ever. If you somehow don't know, this is an all-original 383 automatic 68 Charger. It's not an RT, of course, it's just a basic Charger, but that's plenty good for me. The big block is pretty great when it runs right, and in general, this car is a lot of fun to drive. It might not be quite as fun as this one, but still, it's pretty good. I bought this car about 3 years ago in Lapine, Oregon. I drove it home 300 some miles, and since then I've featured it in a bunch of different videos as I changed some various little things. Notably, the wheels. I got rid of the modern looking Torque Thrust 2s in favor of these old school Kragers, which I love. I also changed the rear gears from the ridiculous 430s that were in it for some reason to a set of 323 Sure Grips. I completed a super low buck engine compartment restoration a couple of years ago. I repainted the factory 383 engine the correct turquoise color. I got rid of an MSD ignition system in favor of some factory points. I did install a cool factory type 4-barrel 383 Magnum air cleaner, and I just generally cleaned stuff up in here. I also ripped out the oversized 26-inch radiator that didn't fit. I installed a leaky factory 22-inch radiator for a time, and then last year I installed this aluminum unit, which fixed everything wrong with the car. Kind of. It does have disc brakes on the front. Other than that, this thing is pretty much 100% stock, mechanically speaking. Although I don't know this to be fact, I strongly suspect the front seats were reupholstered. It's that, or they're in really good shape for originals. The vinyl top, similarly, is kind of too nice to have come on this car brand new in 1968. At this moment, the odometer is reading 89,269.9 miles. Now, the numbers aren't perfectly in line, and one might imagine that could have rolled over, but just kind of generally looking at the condition of things in this car, like, for example, the brake pedal pad, I really don't think it has. Everyone loves the 8-track player with Soul Sounds Volume 22 sticking out of it. Unfortunately, that's just there for looks. It doesn't actually work. The car was repainted a slightly incorrect shade of red at some point. In certain light, this thing looks orange, but I promise you it's not. It's kind of dark red. It's far from a perfect paint job. There are little dings in it, some of which I caused. There are a couple small rust bubbles because it is still a Dodge Charger, but overall, this thing is in pretty nice, presentable shape. Ignoring the fact that it's worth a ridiculous amount of money, because of course it's a 1968 Dodge Charger, this thing really is just about the perfect daily driver classic automobile. The paint job isn't perfect, so you don't have to worry about every little rock chip that might occur, but people are always impressed by its existence. And because it's so stock, you don't have to worry about it idling poorly at stoplights, or stalling, or cold starting badly. You do have to worry about hot starting badly, but that's kind of this whole other thing. The fuel economy is acceptable, you know, for a big block car, and it sounds fantastic. I really love driving this thing. And drive it, I do. Well, okay, I've probably only driven this car 3 or 4 times this summer. Most of its time is spent right here collecting more dust. As I showed in the intro, this thing has recently developed a bit of a runnability issue. I keep forgetting about that issue and then trying to drive the car again. Yeah, it's time to finally fix this. Incidentally, I had a different runnability issue with this thing last year. I actually made a video about it, thinking that it was like a major issue. It turned out to just need the idle circuits blown out and the points adjusted, and that was like it. There are actually several things I'd like to fix on this car, but getting it to happily run on 8 cylinders again would be the most important among them. The first thing I'm going to do, with a cold engine thankfully, is remove all 8 plugs. We'll see what they look like and go from there. Hey kids, do you want to show your friends and random people in the supermarket that you are a card-carrying member of the Dead Dodge Garage Scrap Pack Club? Well, you're in luck, because not only do we have stickers elucidating that fact available on our website, we now have t-shirts. That's right, our friend Steven Andrews designed this excellent piece. And if you want to get one, go over to shop.deaddodgegarage.com and hit the magic buy button. We also have all of your favorite classics. The Dead Dodge Garage branded t-shirt, the Dale's Demon t-shirt, the More Bad Than Car shirt, and many more to come soon. Oh, just take out the spark plugs. Did you notice how I made that sound really easy? Well, it's not, because big block. Now thankfully this is a short deck 383 and not a tall deck 440 or similar. And there's a bit more room to work on the sides around these exhaust manifolds, which again are thankfully cold. This would not be fun with them warm. Number 2 plug wire was not locked in place. It hadn't fallen off, but it wasn't actually clicked. I don't know if it will actually click. Well, pay attention to that. That might be important later. Now, the way these plug wires are routed, they should just kind of fall right out of the way, and we shouldn't have any problems getting them back in their correct homes later. Hey, number 6 plug wire wasn't clicked on all the way either. Am I just that bad at doing stuff? I'm not seeing any like corrosion or burn spots or anything. That is the sound of a working exhaust flapper valve. Most of you classic Mopar owners will not be familiar with that sound. That one was actually on. Okay, to do this, I've got my favorite little teeny tiny 3/8 flexi head snap-on ratchet and a 13/16 plug socket that probably won't actually lock onto the spark plugs. That's just how we roll around here. Looking down through the gap here, I'm reminded that at some point, this car needs a front end overhaul. The front lower control arm bushings are looking, well, chunks of them are gone. Okay, well, first plug out, number 8, looks beautiful. Slightly burnt orange. No buildup or horribleness. Hopefully we'll see more of that, I guess. Number 6 wasn't all that tight. Great going there, bud. You know, the good news here is this is my car, and I have no one else to blame. 6 looks all right. Similar color. These are NGK plugs, not the cheapo Champions I usually use, probably because I only keep Champions in stock for small blocks, and these are what the parts store would have sold me. I'm expecting to find one of these looking really bad. It's not number 4, that looks great too. Man, somebody did a nice job on the tune here. You know, I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think I even have like 1,000 miles on this car in the last 3 years. Oh, there's another thing I need to fix. This distributor cap is broken. And it's broken because when I changed the points and condenser in here, the condenser ended up slightly too close to the cam in the middle, and it ended up catching it and whipping this distributor off and breaking the cap. It backfired in a really impressive way and died when that happened. Number 2 looks good too. Hair leaner than the others maybe. Leanish, leanish, less leanish, less leanish. Yeah, there's nothing here to worry about at all. I wasn't kidding about the dust. Here's what it's supposed to look like. This is still original paint under the hood, which I love. Now the driver's side is where things get particularly interesting because of course someone put a steering box in the way. Thanks, Chrysler. 1 and 3 were actually clicked on. 5 was hanging on by a thread. If the entire problem with this car was loose spark plug wires, I'm going to be very irritated with myself. That one was good. My hand is running into the vacuum reservoir canister mounted under the battery tray. This is to hold extra vacuum to make the headlights work. It doesn't. When this thing shuts off, they don't move. I wonder if it's even plumbed right now. Number 1, little more rich than the other side. Tiny bit of some residue on there. I'm not super concerned. As I'm doing this, I'm actually looking for something else. I'm kind of wondering if this engine could have a head gasket issue. You see, it had a bad radiator for like a year, and I kept driving it. And of course, there's no working temperature gauge. I think it's been hot a few times. Well, okay, I know for a fact it's been hot a few times, but how hot? Not sure. Okay, that one has some oil on it. It's not a ton, and the color is still good. Some built up wet oil around the outside there. Moving on. If any, this one, which also wasn't really torqued, and had a plug wire falling off it, is probably the one I'd expect to see looking not so hot. And it looks fine too. It looks exactly the same as 3 actually. I think it's fine. I did a video on installing this aluminum radiator about 10 months ago. It's a nice piece. It's holding up well, looks the part. Very pleased with that. I would like to get the temp gauge working in this car at some point. Gotta figure that out. Same deal. I mean, yeah, this one looks a little more rich than some of them, but this all looks fine. There's nothing wrong. Okay, I am confused. As mentioned, I deleted an MSD ignition system from this thing and installed a factory points distributor. That may sound like an odd move to some of you, and I understand that, but I had my reasons. The big reason was I didn't want a big ugly MSD box sitting here on the firewall of my basically all original 1968 Charger. I don't understand why anyone would have put it there to begin with. I question their life choices and their morals. Anyway, the other nice thing about single points, obscenely simple. Like the simplest ignition system imaginable. And if you get a decent set of breaker points, which is easier said than done these days, well, it can be quite reliable. You do need to check on them periodically. Back in the bad old days when every vehicle on the road had points, they were to be adjusted about every 10,000 miles. Yep, it's a points cap. It looks about right to me. I could measure it. Really, the right way to check these is with a dwell meter. There's one built into my timing light, so. Anyway, I think I found an issue. I don't know that this is the issue, but it is an issue. Watch this cam section. Look how far that can move side to side. And look how far the points piece is moving as I do this. That's kind of a lot. Now I have several piles of classic Chrysler distributors, but I seem to recall this was the only short deck big block single point unit I had that looked worth using at the time I put this together. I did just look at a couple other points distributors. Pretty much every one of them has some side to side play here. I just think this one might be a little worse. I'm not going to do anything about it for now, but I'll try to remember that's like that. What that amount of play can do in a points distributor is change the points dwell randomly, which could certainly do weird things. This whole broken distributor cap thing is another problem. It's a problem because the area that's broken happens to be the area right around the locating tang. With that broken, the cap can actually just move freely. Of course, when it's clipped in place, it probably won't, but it can. So that's not great. That puts the cap out of phase, and in extreme cases, that could lead to spark jumping around inside, which we don't want. I have other distributor caps, of course, but for originality's sake, this needs to be tan. The only other tan one I have is in decent shape, but it doesn't have brass contacts, which this broken one does, so that's kind of sad. The construction of this cap is way beefier than that one. Also notice it doesn't have a vent on it, and it has the little rotation indicator thingy because this cap fits small blocks and big blocks. I believe this is actually an original Chrysler part. It looks good enough. We're going to throw that on there. It's a little thing, but it sure is nice for service. When I'm setting up these big blocks, I always make sure the number 1 plug wire is in the factory position. This cap did not have the number 1 marking, but this cap does, and what do you know? It's in the right place. Now I have to make a decision. I really don't think there's anything wrong with these plugs I just took out. They look to be in good shape. It doesn't look like any of them are fouled. Do I just preemptively put the fresh plugs in, or do I put the old ones back? The fresh plugs I got also happen to be 1 heat range colder than what I took out. That is because this is all the parts store had. I don't think that'll be any problem. I think I'll just put the fresh ones in. Plugs are back in, wires are on, and I did make sure they actually clicked and fully seated this time. Probably gonna have to come back and check again later because I don't generally just leave these loose. And I have seen wires working their way off on another big block recently, like multiple times. Now I could just fire it up and check my work, but before I do that, I want to do something I don't think I've ever done in the 3 years I've owned this car. And that is look in this Edelbrock carburetor. I don't even know what model carburetor this is. 1406. So I think that's a 650, isn't it? Actually, that's a 600 CFM. Now that might sound a little small for a 3D3 to some people, but I can tell you from experience, it works really well. If this was some high-performance engine that saw ridiculous RPM with frequency, well, it could probably take advantage of like a 750. But it's not, and it doesn't, so we're going to stick with this guy. But I do want to see if there's any debris rolling around in the bottom of it. Given how much time this car spends sitting during the winters especially, I bet there probably is. I pulled the fuel metering rods or needles out to take a look at them. This is kind of interesting. The step-up springs, which live inside of these vacuum pistons, are actually the pink ones. These are rated for 7 inches of mercury vacuum. Typically in the AVS2, you'll see the orange ones, which I think are rated for 5. That just means these have a little bit more spring to them, and they will kick these things up with more force. Typically, you'll only run into problems with springs being too strong when you have an aftermarket cam and not enough vacuum available. The test for that is you loosen these doors while the engine is idling, and you look to see if they're wobbling up and down as the spring raises the piston prematurely. To remove the lid, the choke and accelerator pump rods need to be removed. This one was in the middle hole. And again, as well as this thing runs, well, when it runs on 8 cylinders, I have no intentions of messing with the tune at all. Had to remove the air cleaner stud. For some reason, someone gooped a bunch of, I don't know, honey on a nut on this thing. I tried to use that to remove it, but no, it spins in all that mess. That's off now. And so the lid can be removed. Of course, before I try to lift it off of there, I need to grab my screwdriver and beat it savagely, like so. 60% of the time, this works every time for saving the top gasket. I'd have to hit it a little bit more though. That technique did unstick the gasket from the lid. The problem is you need the gasket to come off with the lid because these floats are kind of trapping it in there. So what I did was worked the one side that was loose over to the other side, carefully using my flathead screwdriver. You could also use a razor blade or a knife or whatever. Floats look nice there, not full of gas. We already know the accelerator pump works properly. It feels nice and squishy. Okay, this carb looks brand new inside, and that is weird. It's weird because I run cheapo ethanol regular fuel in this thing constantly, and I've let it sit in this car and in this carburetor countless times for like months on end, and yet there is no ethanol mess. There's nothing in there at all to worry about. I've spent a lot of time on the channel extolling the virtues of these Edelbrock carburetors, and with good reason. For your bone stock cruiser like this thing, the Edelbrock is the absolute best. And when I say it's the best, I mean it. I do not think there is a single option out there that you can bolt onto a 4-barrel manifold like this that will work better than the Edelbrock. I'm including these goofy EFI kits in that. Like, I especially mean these. I tell people all the time, you don't want one of these stupid things, you want an Edelbrock. There is exactly one problem I see with these consistently, again and again, particularly on big blocks. And that is boiling fuel. When you run one of these things and then you shut it off hot, the fuel that's sitting in these bowls is going to boil. It's going to turn into vapor. When you go to start the car, there won't be fuel in the bowls immediately, but also a bunch of that fuel will have ended up in your intake and it's going to flood your engine out. What you'll have to do, like I have to do in this car every single time when it's hot, is hold the throttle to the floor and crank it for 5, 6, 7 seconds. It'll fire right off like nothing ever happened, but this is not great. So if I can, I'd like to improve that situation. Now there are various ways to combat this problem. The best would probably be installing a big, gigantic carburetor spacer like this under that Edelbrock. Thing is, I don't really have room for that. I would need longer studs, obviously, but I think with my factory type air cleaner, I would be like in the hood. I happen to have one of these little thingies. Now this is just a sheet metal spacer and it's got a second gasket. I'm going to sandwich this below our carburetor and see if that doesn't help to separate that from the intake manifold just that little bit. Maybe it won't make a difference, but maybe it will, and I don't have to change anything else to try it. I've got the carb reinstalled and reassembled. Before I drop the fuel rods back in, I did decide to take a look at them. I kind of figured these would be the stock pieces, but according to the number on the side, which appears to be 7347, not that you'll be able to see that, it's actually not. According to this tuning chart, the factory rod is 7547. That would be found right here in position number 1 in the middle of the calibration chart. This, being 7347, is tuning position 7, which is over here. It's actually shown as a 1.5 stage lean power and a 1.5 stage-ish lean cruise. Given that the power side is the same size as the stock needle, I don't know how that even works. Regardless, I'm not going to be making a change to this. You saw what the plugs look like. All right, now it's all the way back together. There is certainly more stuff to do here. First off, these valve covers leak terribly. The old valve covers leak terribly too. This thing just loves leaking oil down the back of the engine onto the exhaust. I'm considering trying to fix that again. I did buy gaskets, but honestly, I've already tried to fix it twice. What are the chances I'll do better the third time? This, of course, in addition to the inoperable temperature gauge, which I really kind of need. And Lord knows what else I'm forgetting. But I want to go ahead and check my work to this point. Let's see if this thing runs on 8 cylinders. This car is so deluxe. Not only does the dome light work, but so does this fancy convenience light on the dash. And even this one, illuminating the key. Cold start champion. Because Edelbrock Carb. Oh. Okay, well that's no better. I suppose before I get too excited, I should check the points dwell and probably the ignition timing. Judging by that, it certainly doesn't mind more advance. Yeah. Okay, so maybe this is just a points wear issue. What a unit. Alright, my random ear stab put it at 21 degrees base, and that's going to be way too much with this stock curve. The factory spec, according to this sticker, is 7.5 degrees at idle. Yeah, it hates that. Apparently this distributor has a 22 degree curve. I probably knew that at some point, but I forgot. Set it at 36 total, and that gets us 14 base. Sounds pretty good, and no more coughing. But again, it wasn't retarded like that before, and I'll bet you the reason it got that way is because of points wear. I had to switch from the snap-on to my Innova timing light to get the dwell function. According to this, it's currently 37 degrees. From a cursory read on the internet, the spec is something like 32 to 34, so the point should actually be open slightly, but it's pretty close. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, but listen to this thing. It's done this the entire time I've owned it. Occasionally, sitting at idle, you'll hear one cylinder kind of drop out and then come right back. And now it's not doing it because it's camera shy. Oh, there you go. Anyway, I choose not to worry about that basically, but at some point I probably should do a compression check. In fact, 20 minutes ago would have been the time to do that. Now, dwell is a measurement of how long the points stay closed, charging the coil. Seeing as how it's slightly more than it ought to be, that tells me I need to open the points ever so slightly so they spend slightly less time closed. Now, this does make sense relative to point wear, because what happens is this little cheek that rides on this cam dealy bob wears out gradually. As it does that, the points are opening less and less and less. So this is probably what led to the timing change. The reason for that is the point at which the points opens changes slightly with this adjustment because it is opening at a different time relative to the peak right here in the middle. You insert a flathead screwdriver and then twist it in this triangle thing to effect a change. Notice that adjustment point is all the way off to one side. Typically with factory points that actually fit right, it'll be roughly in the middle of the triangle. That was ever so slightly too much. Now we've got 29 degrees. You know, a GM points vehicle has a little window you slide open and then you can turn a screw while the thing is running to effect a change here. We're not so lucky in Chrysler land. Oh yeah, buddy, right in the kill range at 32. Roughly the same amount of change that was made in dwell can be seen here in the advance. That raised the base timing to 20 or 21 degrees or so. So I need to back this back off to 14 and it should be happy. Here we are back at 14 base. And it sounds awesome. Let's listen to how it starts. A moment ago, it was kind of sort of fighting against the starter. Hopefully it no longer does that. Sounds good to me. Every single time I think there's something wrong with this car, it turns out to be absolutely nothing. And it just needs some typical car tinkering. I'm going to keep going. I've got to get some more little things improved on this car so I can enjoy it for the rest of the summer happily. Not tonight, though. It's like past dinner time. It's a couple days later, and this looks like an engine compartment again. I made an executive decision not to do the valve covers right now. I kind of just need to move this car, so I just reefed them down for like the 4th time, and we'll see if that makes any difference. I kind of doubt it. I did also go around real fast and clean up some of the horrible dust mess here. Did I mention this car needs tires really bad? Well, this car needs tires really bad. These Mickey Thompsons don't look bad, but they have a DOT date code format that means nothing to me. They are clearly ancient, they definitely predate safety, and they need to go. So I called our local national tire chain shop and asked them, how much for a set of tires? $275s for the back, $245s for the front. $1,200. Ouch. So I called the local guys and asked them. $1,500. I guess $1,200 was a deal. continues to be a Charger. No more horrible popping. But I have noticed when it gets into the secondaries, it gets a little weird. Hear that? Just kind of falls off for a moment, but then it comes back. Oh, it's hot. Good day to test the whole fuel boiling thing and see if that's improved at all. I did actually kind of test it yesterday, and it hot started great. But it was less 84 degrees then, so yeah. Oh, 84 degrees, that's nothing. In Phoenix, it's 795 outside. You'd be hard-pressed to find a greater car to cruise around on a beautiful sunny day. Windows down, hardtop mode active. Oh yeah. Seriously. Fully fixed. Nice. All right. Well, it was a nice idea. Here's what the carbon intake looked like after pulling it in the garage here. Obviously, fuel was going through that carburetor and bringing the temperature back down. One would imagine that as it sits here, the carb is slowly going to heat soak again, and it's going to get warmer and warmer and boil all of the fuel inside. Here you can see 182 degrees on the front runner of the intake manifold. It's an Edelbrock aluminum piece, but it doesn't really matter. It'll heat soak just as well as anything else. And of course, aluminum's superpower is its ability to dissipate heat to other things like the air or your skin or another piece of aluminum bolted onto it. You can kind of see that yellow patch there. If the camera would stop being dumb. Anyway, you can see right here the real issue is the exhaust crossover directly under the carburetor. It's hot when the engine's in operation. Even though the flapper valve in this car works, there's still going to be some exhaust going through there raising the temperature. And when the thing shuts off, that heat is going to go somewhere. I should have put the imager on it before I installed that plate in there so I could see if there was a noticeable difference. It seems to me that it does do something. It just didn't magically solve this entire problem is all. It's a week later and it's tire time. It's going to be an expensive day. Of course it's pouring rain. It's been absolutely beautiful here for like a month. So now it's time to take this car out and get it wet. You know the wiper switch has been bad on this car since the day I bought it. I've never fixed that for some reason. Remind me to do that. What is seeing, really? Someone has a train horn. Anyway, look, Cooper Cobras. Also a 300. Oh yeah, buddy. Beautiful, magnificent. The only raised white letter tires you can get these days, especially in a 275. Yep, got some nice new tires on the Charger, just in time for summer. Doesn't really stick to the ground any better than it did with the rotten old ones. Yeah. Nice day for this. Why is there random red overspray on these tires? It almost matches the red overspray on my headlight doors. Did you know B-bodies is best bodies? Also, I think the Charger is slightly longer than the 300. I take that back. The 300's got enough room in the front for like a second 360. It's like a foot longer with those bumper guards. You know, when I got it, this car had 295s on it, and they fit pretty well, except for that the wheel spacing was totally wrong. The 275 is like the perfect muscle car tire. So now we're back here, and the Charger is wet, which I don't love. I'd be the first to tell you that this car is not perfect by any means, but I still try to keep it dry, you know, so this stuff doesn't get worse. I had every intention of doing more in this video, like a nice highway cruise. Nope, that ain't happening. Oh yeah, I wanted to fix the temp gauge. I think it's actually a bad sending unit, which is weird. Let's see if I can swap this out without boiling my face off to test that theory. All right, I regret not filming that because it was an absolutely flawless, expert level hot potato handoff. Let's see if this one does anything. Hey, what do you know? So I guess it's 170 degree coolant I just got all over my hand. That's awesome. Next time this thing is overheating to nuclear proportions, I'll probably know. Didn't lose much coolant there, but it was a little low anyway. It took almost a half a gallon. Of course, I don't have an overflow tank on this thing, so you don't fill them all the way in that case. It's probably about that far below the cap now, which might be a bit much. I imagine with a couple heat cycles, we'll dribble a little bit of coolant on the ground, allegedly, and then it'll be good to go. Well there, I've fixed like 3 entire things. Okay, I guess I'll dry it off. At least I'll try. This car is like getting to where it desperately needs a wax job. I should not own nice things. Now there was actually another operation I was hoping would happen with this car this week that I haven't even mentioned yet. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but the fuel gauge in this thing is wildly inaccurate. With a completely brimmed tank of fuel, it reads a little over half, and at about half, it reads under empty. It then continues to read under empty forever, to the point that I almost never see the fuel gauge move at all. I don't keep this thing brimmed. We're pretty sure the issue with the gauge is an aftermarket sending unit, and that's super common. So you can get reproduction sending units, that is the piece with the sock on it that filters the fuel in the tank, and it also has the float and the little arm thingy attached to make the gauge happen. You can buy those all day long, but they're never quite right. Now recently, replacements have become available that are supposed to be accurate, and so we're hoping to put one of those in here for a test. So the plan was to get tires put on here like a week ago, which I didn't do because they're so ridiculously expensive, and then take this thing up to Rocket so Tom could handle that. Obviously, we haven't gotten there, but I think you'll see this in a future video over on his channel, Rocket Restorations. I feel like this video was kind of all potatoes and not much meat. I really thought, once again, this thing had a significant runnability issue and I was going to have to do major surgery or something. I think there's a lesson in here that hopefully all of us can take away, and that is old cars kind of just need constant tinkering. That's part of the experience. So if you want to own one of these, hopefully you enjoy that. I guess another important takeaway is that 68 Chargers are beautiful, but then we all knew that already. Anyway, tune in next time when we hopefully do stuff. Until then, as ever, thank you very much for watching. And remember, white letters out, boys. They even put the weights on the inside. That's why we pay them the big bucks.